Welcome back to another episode of the Miami Heat Roundtable. I'm your host, Amir. So for today's roundtable, we're really excited because we have Tobin back on the show to talk Miami Heat basketball with us. So thank you again, Tobin, for hopping on. We really appreciate your time.
Absolutely, boys. Thanks for having me again.
Appreciate no problem. So the last time you were on the show, Tobin, was back in June. We talked about the Jimmy Butler extension, and we tried to predict how that would play out before I think it was the July 7th deadline. Or not the deadline, but that was the first day you can get that extension signed. We know how that played out so far, and since that time frame, not a lot has happened during this off season. It's been a slow summer, but we're finally getting close to the start of training camp in a few weeks, which is good. We finally have something to look forward to. So my first question for you, Tobin, is with training camp and media day around the corner, what do you expect the team chemistry to be like going into camp with the uncertainty of the Jimmy contract? Is he going to leave next year and actually become a free agent? So we have been hearing that type of noise, as well as the noise of running it back for the sixth time and the front office believing, that we have enough if we're healthy. So just how do you think training camp's going to go this?
Okay. I'll start with, I don't know how it's going to play out with Jimmy. Because I think it's going to dictate a lot on how the year goes, because I think that, in-season chemistry can be dictated a lot by how the year goes and how, his availability is and where things stand with that. Going into training camp, I actually think the chemistry is going to be pretty great, because I think there's a couple of reasons that play into that. One, this Heat team hasn't been together in a while, and I do think that there is a little bit of, hey, the separation has been good for everybody. And one of the points I've been kind of making on the channel and on the radio show has been, it's been a pretty drama-free summer. Like, in spite of the Jimmy Butler contract extension looming over everything, the Heat publicly made their stance known. Jimmy's, I guess, side made it known, but that we never really got conversation, but it was all reported that he was planning to just play the year out. And so that big piece of mystery kind of got squashed right away. Like, it seems like all parties are, hey, we're going to play this year out. Whether he's going to be back next year or whether he's not, I think is going to dictate a lot on the terms of the year. But there wasn't a lot of trade rumors. There wasn't a lot of trade fodder. You think to this point last year, Damian Lillard, I think I don't even know if he was traded yet. If he was, maybe it was a mere a week that it happened. And you had to think that, like, Tyler Hero and Jaime Jaquez and Nikola Jovic and all these guys, I remember getting to media day, and these are topics you have to ask them. These are things that they admitted, weighed on them heavily. And Tyler Hero's having to do subtweeting, and Nikola Jovic is telling media at the World Cup he doesn't want to be traded, and Jaime Jaquez is in commercials with Jimmy Butler, but he doesn't know if he's going to be here. So there was really none of that this summer, and I think that that's all going to lead to it being pretty good chemistry. That on top of, I think you got a good bed of young guys from the Summer League team that won the title that are excited to hit camp. I think they got some new undrafted guys that everybody's excited about. So I actually expect chemistry to be pretty good at training camp amongst everybody. I guess the one mystery with Jimmy will be, what costume is he going to show up with? If he is he going to do a lot of media? Because he hasn't done any media. Like, for the most part, everybody's at least done. Even Tyler's done like one interview. Jimmy's done nothing. He's just been off. I think now he's in Sweden. And I thought it was cool. Like, the other day, he gave Pelle Larsson a shout out because he was working with Pelle's skill coach in Sweden. And that was kind of like his lone Heat shout out all summer. So I don't know. I think chemistry is going to be pretty good, because I think that the Heat and Jimmy are on the same page of not really making this contract thing a thing. And if I know really how Jimmy marches media wise, I don't think he's going to try and make this a thing.
So, Tobin, where do you see the Miami Heat being stacked up in the Eastern Conference? The Boston Celtics, they're not going anywhere. The Milwaukee Bucks with Dame and Giannis, they're going to come back and try to win some more games like they did last year. And then same thing with the Villanova Knicks. They're not going anywhere. So where do you see this Miami Heat stacked up within the Eastern Conference? I mean, we do have 4 20-point-per-game scorers, but that does have to translate to the box score. So how do you see the Miami Heat stacked up in the East?
It's a great question just because it's tough for anybody to feel like just stagnation and then being status quo is going to equal better, because it's kind of a boring explanation for everybody. Everybody wanted them to make a big splash. And when you see the New York Knicks go out there and go get Mikal Bridges, you're automatically thinking, oh, they're going to be better. But not every move automatically means, hey, that's going to work out. Go and look at the Milwaukee Bucks. Like, it didn't work out for them last year going and getting Damian Lillard. And I know that health had some part of that. And they had, a weird thing where they fire a coach who was second in the East at the time. But it doesn't necessarily mean just because you make a move doesn't mean that move is going to work out. So I think that, I think it's an East that rightfully so has a lot of teams that stake claim to they're going to be the team that's going to dethrone Boston. But ultimately, it's just right now, Boston is the champ, and then everybody else kind of follows suit. I don't really think the Heat are far away from the Knicks, far away from the Sixers, far away from the Pacers. I don't look at them out of that class. The thing that's going to be, interesting with them this year is coming off of a year where you get embarrassed and you have more starting lineups than ever, and you get gentlemen swept out of the first round. You don't have Jimmy Butler, and you don't have Terry Rozier, and you have a Duncan Robinson with an old man back, and you have all these injuries that come into fold. All right, if they are all healthy and you can get some consistency, what does that talent really look like? And can the Heat put, all that together to have a better regular season? You mentioned the 20-point scores that they all have. The one thing I would like to see the Heat that we need to see some change with is this has been a woeful offense to watch over the last couple of years, especially in the regular season, because Jimmy doesn't take that leap to being a guy who can give you 35 a night like he does in the playoffs. It's very strange how Jimmy's never had a 40-point regular season game with the Miami Heat, but you go and see what his stats are in the postseason. It's like he just becomes a different guy. I do think the Heat need to pick somebody, whether it's Jimmy, whether it's Bam, whether it's Tyler, and say, hey, this is our main hub of offense every night. This is our guy who's going to take the most shots. This whole piece in the pie together thing, this sum of our parts being, this great sum together. It's nice, but I do think that they need to kind of pick a lead dog from the get-go and figure out who that is. I just don't know who Spo's going to hand those keys over to.
What's going on, Tobin? So I got a little two-parter for you. So there was an article that came out not too long ago, pretty much saying there's two definite starters, and so I'm assuming that's Jimmy and Bam. And obviously we traded for Terry, and we still got Tyler. And I know Spo likes competition. I think competition actually helps the team out in the long run anyways. But do you ever see, and I know this question's probably asked so many times, but one, do you think Tyler Hero has peaked at this point of his career? Because when you look at his numbers, they're very identical, 20.7, 20.1, 20.8, and even go from rebounds and assists, everything's very identical. Do you think he has peaked, and do you think he has a future with this Miami Heat team? And is he a starter this year? Because I think the team plays better with him on the bench. And Terry and Tyler, I just don't think it's going to work out too well.
Yeah, I think they're all fair questions. All of them. I think they're all fair questions. I think the idea, has he peaked? It's so interesting because he is young. He's going to turn 25 in the middle of the year. So you're not really scratching your prime yet, but also he's been in the league for 5 years. So it's tough to weigh, like, what is experience versus age in this factor? It's like, as a UFC fan, it's funny. I'm like, you think about a guy like Max Holloway, who had been in the UFC since he's 19. Like, is he an old man at 31? Like, is he a different type of player, or is he still young? Because, like, what's the magic number there? So has Tyler Hero peaked? I think the big question with him, honestly, more so than like, is he going to level up, is can the man physically handle a basketball season? It's a bigger question to me than his skill set, because I think he is a very good scorer. I think he's a deadly shooter. I think he's a very improved playmaker. We all know he's not the best defender, but I don't think of him as a lazy defender. I just don't think he's good at it. I think that, you've seen some games where he's gotten the passing lanes and he's made plays. And so I do think Tyler tries. He's a very good rebounder for his position. So I think Tyler's good, but the big thing with him is he has two issues. One, he doesn't look like he can physically hold up for a season. And two, when he gets into the playoffs, he feels like he is physically overwhelmed when teams really try and take him away. And he seems to short circuit. And you can look at it twofold, like the fact that he craves that much attention from defenders is kind of a nod to his skills, and everybody knows how ignitable that he is. But also, okay, well, what's the next switch when they do try and take stuff away? Is he ever going to make that leap to an all-star player who can still get his offense if, guys are bullying him a little bit and roughing him up? We've kind of done the Tyler Hero muscle comparison. I do think there is like an element of him that looks like he is thicker. Like, it's not even the arms I'm looking at. I'm like, all right, he looks like he's a little more stout. I'll get a better look at it, I guess, at media day in a couple of weeks to truly see if that's noticeable, because Instagram, it can be very, very tricky with how people can mess with those angles. So I think the bigger question for Tyler, more so than has he peaked, is can he physically hold up? I think the skills are there, but I'm more concerned about him and his body. For the idea is, okay, should he start? And the competition they're going into this thing. I think it's a fair question. And I love the fact that if it's true, Eric Spoelstra is really putting 3 jobs on the line in camp. Great job by him. He should. I think that there's a lot of interesting scenarios you could go here. I think, Udonis has them, though he got kind of reprimanded by the organization, by Pat Riley, at his tongue-in-cheek at the State of the Heat, where he says, hey, UD needs to kind of keep his stuff in-house with him going on SportsCenter and saying that exact thing, that we're better with Tyler as a 6-man, which they were. They were a 1 seed. But do they really, do they want to go back to an old wound? Do they want to, because they know that he's going to make a stink. Maybe not cry and whine about it, but anytime he is going to be asked about it, he's going to say he'd prefer to start. You know that he'd prefer to start. We all know kind of the answer to the question. But are they at the point with him where they just don't care anymore? They don't care about his feelings anymore. I think both, I think that's, a fair thing for the organization to kick around. I kind of doubt that they're actually going to bench him. And Terry, would they do it with Terry? Terry's, I think they know would be less drama, because I think Terry is an element where he's just happy to be here. But then you're talking about, are you starting a backcourt of Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero? Now we're talking all right, is that overkill? Does that work together? I don't know. The one guy and the one piece that I think is really up for grabs is probably I kind of call it the big next to Bam, because people are so obsessed with this idea of Bam being a 4, because it can go either way. I think the job could go, it could stick with Nico and stick with Nikola Jovic, and so essentially Bam's still the center. It could go to KEL'EL WARE. Maybe he has an amazing camp, or the Heat just want to go with that from the jump if they think he's that kind of impressive. Or I guess if you're going to go Spo's trend, it could go Haywood Highsmith too. You got to throw him in the mix. So I think that's the most likely position that could have a shakeup. I don't think the backcourt of Terry Rozier and Tyler is going to mess with, because here's the thing with a competition. I'm sorry I'm rambling on this answer, but a competition is it's kind of hard to figure out in a basketball season, because it's really a week training camp and 3 preseason games that they really throw everybody out there. So if they're going to make that choice, Spo's probably already got it in his mind. Remember, this was a big thing last year with Kyle Lowry. Oh, is Kyle Lowry going to be the starting point guard? Well, they didn't really have anybody to win Jay Rich and Drew Smith. They didn't really have anybody to take that job from Kyle Lowry. Then Jay Rich ended up getting hurt. It was a moot point anyway. So we'll see. But I think if I had to guess of the starting jobs that could actually change, I'd say the most likely is probably going to be Nico, because, he's young. They could decide to do this whole thing of starting Bam. If they are into this Bam at the 4 thing, well, then the most likely candidate for that is then to put KEL'EL out there. They did start Kevin Love last year, but I can't imagine that's the direction they're going to go in.
First and foremost, Tobin, never apologize for going on a long tangent, my guy. You can go as long as you want on this channel. I'm sure we all agree on that. Before I get to my question, though, I want to kind of piggyback what you mentioned earlier about having Terry, Tyler, Bam, and Jimmy. seeing who you want to be the number one option. That's something I've been preaching for a while. I think it's Bam. So I'd love to hear your take on that, who you feel would be number one. But my actual question for you, and it kind of segues into what everything we've been talking about, because you actually mentioned it earlier. You think this team's going to have great chemistry. And I personally feel that fully healthy, this team can go all the way. I don't care about anyone in the East. But my question for you, there's 3 names I've been seeing fluttering a lot in trade talks. Kyle Kuzma, Zach LaVine, Brandon Ingram. Do you think any of these 3 players make the Miami Heat better? Or do you think what we have is, I guess, better than adding any of those 3 players on this team? Really interested in hearing what you got to say about that.
The one that intrigues me the most is Ingram, just because he's a former All-Star. He's kind of carried the load for New Orleans at times where Zion's been out of there. And I think, like, if they're looking for somebody who just, you know, you can tap into just what it looks like unbelievable offensive talent. And also he's not the healthiest, but he's healthier than Zach LaVine. So that's what interests me there. Kuzma's a nice player. I think if you told me Kuzma's on the member of the Miami Heat in 3 years when his contract's up, I would not be surprised. The guy flirts with the Heat all the time, but I think he kind of is I think he's a nice fit in there, but I don't think he's a guy who like necessarily takes you up a notch. And that's not a knock. Like, he's been part of a championship team, but I don't know, if that's like the earth-shattering move. I think the intriguing of like, hey, ceiling that could actually make a difference. Ingram is the one to me that I would be intrigued by. But I think the Heat are kind of at this weird crossroads with the Jimmy thing, in that I think if you're going to invest the kind of money that Ingram is looking for, man, you got to be positive that guy is going to be a guy who takes you over the top. And they kind of like half did it last year with toe in the water with Terry, because Terry had a couple of years on his deal. They give him a first-round pick. It was kind of the most obvious trade that was out there. I think with Ingram, knowing that he'd want uber money after this, you better be sure, like, hey, this is definitely going to work for us. So that's the name that intrigues me the most out of everybody, because I feel like out of those 3 names, he's the one with age, with durability being better than LaVine, and just having a little more ceiling than Kyle Kuzma. He's the one I like the most. The idea of somebody being the number one option, yeah, I've been talking about this a lot, and I want to see it be Bam. I'm a big Bam guy. I like, he's a good relationship with our show, but I've also just been like a fan of his since he's come on the Heat. When we were giving him the nickname Kemp Jordan back in the day, and he was 19, and he was just basically a lob threat and shutting down Steph Curry in the corner. He's grown so much. But here's the thing with Bam that's such an interesting conundrum is he is so Heat culture that sometimes I almost think it's a detriment to him, because he has this like he's like caught between UD and Dwayne Wade, and that D Wade almost needed Shaq to like push him, saying, no, you're the dude. And Bam, because he had a year where he was basically the grunt guy who did all the dirty work and got 30 seconds and had the Udonis Haslem, in his ear the entire time. And Udonis is legitimately like his big brother. And he feels like this harbinger of culture and is bathed in everything they do. I think it's tough for him to just say, hey, my team now, my team. I want to be the guy. I just don't think and it's not that I don't think he's a dog. I think he's a winning player. I think he's a big championship piece, but I don't know if he has that part of him. And it's interesting seeing him amongst Team USA, because I felt like they almost treat him like a star more than the Heat treat him like a star. Like, I think it's not that the Heat take him for granted, but it's like, Bam's always there. Bam's going to be Bam. And I think it was interesting. I've read, I don't know if you guys have read Shandell Richardson, a longtime NBA reporter. He's been doing some stuff with Bam, and he talked about him being the number one option. And, Bam's like, doesn't mean always taking the number one, that takes the most shots. And I'm just like, yeah, but okay, but now you're at the credentials where you could if you wanted to. Like, you just got the $200 million extension. Jimmy didn't. Like, you're the guy. Everybody knows you're the guy. Do you really want that? Because he said afterwards, like, he wants more moments like Detroit and game-winning opportunities and chances to take the last shot. Does he really ever want to take the wheel? And I don't know. It is going to be interesting. Like, I don't know if that ever happens with Jimmy here. And I don't necessarily know if that happens with Tyler here, because Tyler's going to take a lot of shots too. So it is an interesting thing. Like, I do think they have to find that balance amongst the three. But I do think, like, look, based on availability, what he means to the organization, backing him up with the paychecks, I think it's pretty clear the organization's made their stand on who their guy is. But as far as a cohesive, environment in the team, will he ever really take the wheel with the team constructed as is? I don't know. I'm not saying no, but I got to see it to kind of believe it, to see him say, Tyler, get the hell out of the way. Jimmy, get the hell out of the way. This is my night. I'm leading the way the entire way. So, but I think, everybody knows his talent. Everybody talks about all the stars. They all want to play with him. So, what is that next leap to get him to dive in and tap into that? I don't know.
So, Tobin, before we close, I have one more question. I know you're a big fan of Nico. And so in terms of his development next season, what do you think his role is going to be on the team next year? Do you think he will be a starter again next to Bam? And in my opinion, I don't know if I love it, because he's really limited within that role. He needs to spread the floor so Bam and Jimmy can obviously operate in the paint. And he does like to, play that transition role where he, rebounds and plays off the break. But Jimmy likes to slow the game down, right? So I don't think it's the most optimal position, but I do enjoy the fact that the Miami Heat actually put someone that's 6'11" next to Bam versus him playing with Jaime and Caleb and Haywood last season. So what do you think his most optimal role is? Like, do you see him starting, or do you think it might be more beneficial coming off the bench? Because we don't have a backup point guard. And it would be kind of cool to see him play that like Lamar Odom kind of role, be the backup point forward next to Jaime, next to possibly KEL'EL WARE, Duncan Robinson. Like, that could be a lot of firepower around him. So what are your thoughts on that before we close?
It's a very interesting question. It's almost like, we look at all these other guys and it's like, we've done the stories of Bam, Jimmy, and Tyler for a long time. But yeah, Nico's in such an interesting year because he is going into his third year, a little similar to Tyler. Like, he's going into his third year, but he just turned 21 years old. So you're kind of caught between, is this a big, development year, or is he still a project? Because everybody accepted the fact this guy was a project. I mean, go look at what he looked like when he walked onto the Heat. Go look what he physically looks like now. The one thing that I think sucked coming into this summer is the fact that he suffered an injury going into the Olympics, because I really wanted to see what he was going to be like. Because watching what he did last year in the World Cup compared to this year, it kind of was like almost a bit role on this Olympic team, because I think he really wasn't healthy, and I think he just wanted to be there for his club. But he didn't, and also, it was a little different because they had Joker on this team, so that obviously was a big hub for everything. So that kind of left where his development is a little murky. I think in the starting lineup, it's the most comfortable, because I think he's shown last year he's very comfortable just sitting and hitting those threes on the wing or sitting in the corner. Like, he's okay with that, and he did it pretty well. But as you said, he's a very unique player. Is that using his skill set to the best of his abilities? Is this unicorn who's 6'11", who gets a full head of steam, who is a great passer? Is the best part of him just making him a three-point threat, just making him a guy who's getting out of everybody's way, or is he more dynamic with the ball in his hands? The other thing about Nico, we all laud his transition ability, but like, when the game slows down, okay, then can he create? Can he sit there and can he look over everybody at the top of the key? Can he set his opponents set his teammates up for good opportunities? Can he run an offense other than just, we're all busting and running? Okay, instead of me rocking to the rack, I'm finding this open guy and making the highlight pass? Can he do that when the thing slows down? Can he do it with anybody on the team? So that's why I'm curious about what his role is going to be. I do feel like because of his age and because it's not like it feels like the most replaceable thing right now currently in the starting lineup. That's why I look at the camp battles, so to say, and I say, well, he looks like the most logical guy. If somebody was to lose their job, he's probably the guy, because it's maybe like it's the least impact from where he's at right now. I love Nico. I like, it's like I'm torn. Like I'll talk to Mike Woodson about KEL'EL WARE, and I'll be like very excited about that. But then I'll go watch Nico light up the Bucks. And I'm like, so what side are we really going to choose? And I do think with the Bam thing, it's an interesting full circle thing, because it may be a little bit of an input of, hey, Bam, what do you want to do? Do you want to try this thing with KEL'EL? Do you want to try and roll with him first, or do we rock with Nico? Like, what does he think is the best tool to kind of unlock everything? But he's in for a very fascinating and big year with where his career's at. And I'm sure he, like everybody, wants to, get his big piece of the pie and make a big impact this year. It's just going to be a matter. I mean, he looks physically, after the injury happened, it does look like he physically put on some more muscle as he's getting older. So we'll see. We'll see what kind of obviously he's got a no SPO system defensively. I think they made a big statement of that after the playoffs last year, that he's got to be, really in tune with all the details, because he almost kind of fell into his role by chance. Like, he almost was like, all the injuries happened, and then, all right, we were here with Nico. And is Spo really in love with this guy as a player, or does he still feel like there's other options that can make it better? It's a fascinating conundrum they're facing going into this camp.
Yeah, he's only played 62 total. He hasn't even played a full 82 basically across 2 seasons. We know the first season he did have the back issue, but Spo traditionally doesn't play a lot of young players, especially when they're not ready on the defensive end, of course.
Yeah, so, and that's going to be the interesting thing with, like, the one thing with KEL'EL too is he's right in there with him. Like, okay, does he trust him? Like, is he going to trust KEL'EL to have everything locked up? Or does he feel like, hey, you go, almost as soundwise, like, go be a rim protector, Bam and Jimmy are going to go and cover these, like, run it like that? I don't know. It's the one thing that's going to be cool is Eric Spoelstra having all of this time to kind of visualize it. This is not a quick turnaround. And while it is a lot of the same pieces, he does have some different pieces that he can tinker with and think of the ways to make this a bit of a different team and bring them a new dynamic.
Yeah. I mean, depth should have been our strength last year, but we were the 4th most injured team. So the depth kept us afloat and kept us in the play-in. So hopefully Spo can leverage those new pieces that are going to be around Jimmy and Bam. And
37 different starting lineups, and we were still 10 games over 500 and made the playoffs. So just saying, I think we got this next year.
Yeah. 3 games from the 4th seed or whatever it was, the 3rd seed.
4 games from the 2nd seed. Just saying. And we had 37 different starting lineups. The only teams that matched it were all tanking teams. And we were still 10 games over 500. So I'm excited for this season. Just saying, though.
Exactly. So anyway, Tobin, thank you so much for hopping on and joining us once again. And so make sure everybody in the audience who's watching today, I'm sure you guys are already subscribed to Tobin's YouTube channel, but if you're not, go to the @Tobin Show on YouTube, subscribe to his channel, subscribe to all of our podcasts as well. Is there anywhere else you want to let the audience know where they can find you, Tobin?
We'll be I mean, we got my radio show as well with Leroy Horde on 560 WQAM, which is live every single day.
Leroy.
It's live from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and you guys any audience member can get in on the chat there as well, and they can interact with the show. So yeah, that's where you guys can find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much again.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Enough said.
Hey, Tobin, one more thing. Who you got? Marab or Sean O'Malley?
I got O'Malley, but I could be swayed because we're having Marab on the show on Thursday, so we'll see. Maybe he gets my support after coming on the show, because the show has been pretty good mojo for the fighters who come on, but I am worried a little bit about that size difference and the speed of O'Malley striking. But Merab's an animal, man. I think it's going to be a tough fight.
He is, for sure.
I'm going Merab.
I'm going to O'Malley as well. Thanks again.
You got it, boys. Thank you.